I feel like I said this yesterday. Are you sick of me yet? The answer is no, it seems, which is a good thing. I hope that you are loving these videos. Please subscribe to the Raging Moderates YouTube channel. I have a wonderful swing district congressman coming up. We're going to talk about RFK's weird obsession with kids' sperm. Is that the best plug ever? I feel like it's up there. Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Jessica Tarlov, and my guest today is Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Deluzio, Navy veteran who served in Iraq and is the vice chair of the Four Country Caucus, a bipartisan group of veteran representatives. Congressman, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for making some time.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. You're busier, though. I guess you're shut down, but
I wish we weren't. I'm sure we'll get into it. Believe me, I'm sure.
I do want to start with this story about the strikes on boats in the Caribbean that the Pentagon has been carrying out for several weeks now. They're billing them as anti-narco-terrorist operations, but there's bipartisan concern about them and the fact that Congress has gotten no oversight over the operations. We just saw that the military commander overseeing these missions, Admiral Alvin Halsey, has resigned less than a year into the job. One U.S. official who's quoted in the New York Times piece said that Admiral Halsey had raised concerns about the mission and the attacks on the alleged drug boats. What's your take?
I think there are real concerns, and it's not just Democrats who have them. I think more Republicans should be speaking up because, look, let's go back to a basic, fundamental constitutional idea. The Congress decides, the American people decide when we go to war. Launching offensive strikes against whatever you want to call the organizations is typically that's viewed as an act of war, right? We've traditionally treated drug runners and cartels through the lens of law enforcement. So no one's going to defend those guys. I'm not going to. But we've traditionally used law enforcement with military support in international waters. Instead, we're seeing now military strikes with, I think, very flimsy, if any, legal justification. The Congress has not authorized this stuff. Let's have a debate. The administration has evidence for why the American people should send our troops into harm's way here. Let's have that debate. Let's have a decision. Let's have a vote. None of that's happened. And, there have been deaths on all of these strikes reported to the public. Are there non-combatants? Are there civilians? Are there people who weren't armed? Do now these cartels know that there are strikes coming? Are they now putting innocent people to use them to deter American attacks, or are those people now in harm's way? These are all basic questions you'd expect the Congress to ask. We got to get some answers on it.
Yeah, the Colombian government has said as well that one of the boats was theirs and that there were Colombian civilians on it. We've heard about fishermen, reports at least, of fishermen who are not narco-terrorists being on some of these boats. And now the administration is also saying that they could take this to be a land war in Venezuela. Do you think they are after regime change?
Plenty in the administration haven't been shy about that. Plenty of my counterparts in Congress have not been shy about that. I don't think the American people have voted to go send American troops to invade Venezuela. That is nothing to say about whether we think Maduro's a bad guy. He is. But I think that is a very different mission. It is one the American people have not weighed in on. And again, you're talking about something as serious as sending young Americans into harm's way to fight and bleed and die. That is a major, major decision. The Congress and the American people always have to weigh in on that decision in my book. And look, I'm a guy, I voted for some of these war powers resolutions when Donald Trump wasn't even president, when Joe Biden was. I think the Congress has ceded too much power to presidents across political parties around war making, around war powers. We got to bring this back. We got to have honest debates with the American people, and we got to have votes in the Congress.
Absolutely. Another big national security or foreign policy story is that Zelenskyy is back at the White House today. Hopefully that meeting will go like the last couple and not the first blow up one.
Wearing suits? I mean,
I don't think he's going to, but I think they have just decided that the dress code matters less at this point after Alaska and the failed summit with Vladimir Putin. What's your expectation for what comes out of that meeting?
Look, my hope, my optimism, right, is continued pressure on Putin, right? Seeing our willingness to back up the Ukrainian people and a path to peace. No one wants to see a war last forever. The suffering has been immense. And, I'm going to root for peace and sovereignty for the Ukrainians, knowing that their American friends are with them. But again, a path to peace. There has been more rhetoric, thankfully, finally being tougher on Putin out of this administration. Let's have more of that. This is the war that he chose, that he made. It's a war of conquest, and we should not be shy about saying that's exactly what this is.
We talked about it straight up that we're in the midst of a government shutdown, day 17, I believe it is today. What's your take on any progress that's being made? It seems like Leader Thune in the Senate is trying to olive branch as much as he can, but Mike Johnson is not going to go for a straight bill on ACA subsidies being extended. Where do you think we are?
Well, let's start with I'm home in my district now. I was in Washington for a couple of days. Mike Johnson has not had the House in session for weeks now. I want us to have a deal to reopen the government to deal with the spiraling healthcare costs. I need Republican counterparts to negotiate with. And if Mike Johnson's not going to show up or have his members show up, then the White House and President Trump should work out a deal with congressional Democrats to get the government reopened, to deal with these expiring tax credits, and to get healthcare costs down. I need counterparts for that. And I just think it's crazy that Mike Johnson has said, as Speaker, we're keeping Republican House members out of Washington. Like, this is the time we should be down there trying to work out a deal. So great. I'm glad to hear there are negotiations in the Senate. I've seen some of the reporting there as well. The House should be part of this. And if congressional Republican leaders aren't willing to show up and make a deal, then the White House should be talking to congressional Democratic leadership to find some way out of this. We didn't even get into the real cost to the public and to a lot of good public servants for a shutdown. I was in DC this week, and I serve on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. We had the president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association come brief us. His members got partial paychecks earlier this week. Their next paycheck, if we're still shut down, will be zero. So number one, imagine that's you, or imagine if you get a listener who's doing that important work and you're being told to show up with no pay, already thinly staffed at so many of these towers. That's a dangerous situation, and that's putting a lot of stress on people who may feel like they got to go make Uber rides or make a terrible decision and give up an important job because they got to pay the bills for kids' medicine or rent or whatever it is. And that's just one slice of federal workers. There are a lot of people who are going to be put in a horrible position because of this. And I think we'll see impacts if this continues beyond the 17 days we're already in this thing.
Yeah, I've seen some voices like a Kevin Kiley, a Republican in California, out there saying, like, we have to at least be back in session and have a discussion about this. There's reporting about Republicans voicing concerns on private calls. I hope that this will not go as long as some people are expecting it to. I'm going to whipsaw around to electoral politics now, and I'm sure you saw that Axios piece yesterday about Pennsylvania Democrats rallying to oust John Fetterman. Your name was mentioned as a potential contender if there was a challenge. Brendan Boyle, Connor Lamb, who had lost the primary to Fetterman originally when he won the seat. Is there any truth to this?
I can't speak for those guys. And like what I said in that piece was, look, I'm focused on number one, we have judicial retention races in Pennsylvania. There aren't a lot of elections across the country that are getting a lot of attention. There's some governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia. Our state Supreme Court is up for retention. It's 3 of those justices. So I've been all over Pennsylvania helping those folks. We have midterms next year. 2028 is a long time away. So I can't speak for anybody else who was quoted in there, but to me, we got important work to do in my district and across Pennsylvania, many elections before we get to 2028.
Okay. That makes sense.
It's the honest truth. I mean, look, it's also our Pennsylvania Supreme Court is why we have a fair congressional map, right? All these redistricting fights and gerrymandering fights are happening in all these states, Democratic and Republican now. We have a fair map. My district is competitive because the state Supreme Court said our state constitution says you got to have fair congressional districts. That's a big deal that those justices, if the Republican and outside Republican money could beat them, could then look to gerrymander again in Pennsylvania. So there are real stakes in these elections. And I haven't even gotten into protecting the litany of rights that our state Supreme Court has done, including we had people try to overturn the election in Pennsylvania in 2020, and our state Supreme Court held the line. So really, really big stakes in those judicial races in Pennsylvania this year.
Absolutely. Do you have a view on what is prompting the backlash against Fetterman? Not saying that you are going to run for his seat, but what's going on in the internal dynamics there?
I mean, look, the polling speaks for itself, and I've been pretty clear too that I've got to have a good working relationship with both of my senators. One of them's a Democrat, one's a Republican. So I've not been on this train of just bashing these guys because I got to get stuff done for my region. I want to have help to deliver funding. Where we disagree, and we've had plenty of disagreements on things like government spending bills with both the senators. I'm clear about that. I've had disagreements with Fetterman on war powers, for instance, and we can hash those out. I'm not as much interested in kind of the internal palace intrigue of, scheming to kick somebody out of office when I've got to get work done for my district.
It's a very good answer. Makes me sad because I do love palace intrigue.
I get it.
But I appreciate it. And it's
Yeah.
also probably how you want a swing district seat.
You got to do the job, right? Like we're not elected to go just be elected. You're elected to do some work and get something done for people.
Yeah. I wish a few more of your colleagues would feel that way as I see endless cable news hits. And I am a fan of cable news, but I'm sick of seeing some of their faces. One last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, RFK Jr., who there are so many directions you could go with RFK Jr. I was surprised and heartened to see John Thune on MSNBC yesterday morning say straight up, don't listen to RFK Jr., go talk to your doctor for real medical advice. But then he came out, RFK, later in the day with an absolute banger, even for him, this warning that teenage boys have half the sperm of older men and that America's facing a full-blown fertility crisis. I want you to take a look at this clip.
Okay.
Today, the average teenager in this country has 50% of the sperm count, 50% of the testosterone as a 65-year-old man. Our girls are hitting puberty 6 years earlier. And that's bad, but also our parents aren't having children. Parents who want to have children do not have access. I have 7 children. I feel that God has blessed me with that, and I can't imagine how different my life would be if I did not have that blessing.
What do you make of RFK Jr.'s weird obsession with our kids' sperm counts?
Bizarre. I don't know where to begin. And by the way, he's talking about people having a hard time deciding to build families. Like, I don't know, there's an economic piece of that. If life is too darn expensive to have children, it becomes impossible for people. And I don't know what the heck he was getting at. I mean, there's a state representative who's a good friend and ally of mine who's an emergency doc in my district. And, we talk a lot about what he is seeing on like the real dangerous public health stuff coming out of RFK. The vaccine moves he's made have been really dangerous. And I'm from a part of the world in Western Pennsylvania. We cured polio. There are people still alive who talk about what life was like before the polio vaccine. And that's just one example. And so it's dangerous stuff and oftentimes incoherent on top of it for real basic public health things like safe vaccines that we need. We need people to trust good science and we scrutinize it. That's fine. That's healthy. But my God, this guy is peddling some weird stuff these days.
That's a very genteel response. Also probably how you win a swing district. Congressman Deluzio, it was a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me on.